totally forgot how to do it. Share screen. There we go. Okay. May we open the meeting with a moment of silent prayer, if you wish, each in your own way, followed by the set-aside prayer for those who care to join. God, please help us set aside everything we think we know about ourselves, alcoholism, AA, and even you, God. We ask for an open mind so we can have a new experience. Help us see the truth. Amen. Some of you guys have probably already heard this story. It's kind of a funny story about that prayer. We came to the group conscience with the, actually I brought it as a motion years ago to the group conscience that we use the set-aside prayer instead of the serenity prayer, because we thought it was more relevant for a book study. And we voted it in the group conscience, and then I went and wrote up this version and had it printed and laminated and all that so we could put them out on the tables at the meeting. And then we're doing the prayer, and I don't know, probably did about 100 copies of this thing, printed on this thick blue cardstock and laminated. And then with the 7-step prayer on one side, the set-aside prayer on the other. And then we're doing the set-aside prayer, and I realized that we're setting aside our old ideas about everything except the big book. The one thing I forgot to put on there was the big book. So when we do this set-aside prayer, anyway, I left that off, but we just go with it. Okay, let's get back to the stuff here. From the forward to the first edition, it says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing, no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. My name is Chad Payne. I'm alcoholic. Been sober since April 2nd, 2003. Okay, this section is called Online Etiquette. Please keep your audio turned off. We kind of muted everybody anyway. When sharing or making an announcement, we ask that you turn on your video so we can see your beautiful face. However, it's not a requirement. If you feel uncomfortable showing your face online, we will still allow you to share. The recording feature has been turned off to honor our principle of anonymity. Okay, welcome everybody to the online version of the regular Wednesday night open big book study meeting of the primary purpose group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you don't have to identify yourself nor your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours. While this is an open meeting, membership in AA is limited to those who have a serious drinking problem and have a desire to stop drinking for good. Okay, we're going to pass the virtual basket. Our 7th tradition states that each group ought to be fully self-supporting through their own contributions. If this is your first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, we ask that you be our guest. We're glad you're here and hope you come back and become a part of our lives. On the other hand, if this is a regular meeting for you and you can handle a couple of bucks, it really helps out as we only meet once a week. We're doing donations through Venmo, and Ashley has posted our Venmo handle. I think that's what it's called. Its primary purpose, @Group Austin. I think the @Group Austin is really the only part you have to put in. So hit the menu button on the top left in Venmo, select search people, and then it's primary purpose @Group Austin. Okay, announcements. We'll start out with the same thing we announce every week. We do a weekly email. It's a weekly update. It usually comes out on either Monday or Tuesday. and it has whatever announcements and some information about the group, and then also what we read and some notes on what we discussed at the Tuesday night meeting, at the in-person meeting. If you're interested in getting on the list to receive that email, go to austinppg.org and click the link to the webmaster and send an email. We'll get you on the list. If for some reason you've already done that a couple of times and you're still not getting the email, well, then send me an email here at my email address, and I'll forward it over to Matt. Another announcement that we have is we do a foundation meeting on the website, austinppg.org. We have a recording of the foundation meeting. If you're new to AA or our group and have not attended this meeting, we highly encourage you to check it out. It's a great introduction to what Alcoholics Anonymous and our group is all about. Freedom from alcoholism through the application and practice of the 12 steps as they were given us. It's also a great talk, since there's a recording of it there. It's a great talk to give to somebody new coming into AA. It's also a great talk to learn how to better carry the message into treatment centers and 12-step people and things like that. Do we have any more announcements?
Yeah, I will just say there's been a few questions about the email list, and it's something that we can bring into our group conscience when we meet next. Our scribe, so if you're on the email list, with now us moving the Zoom meeting to Wednesday, the email notes will be from our Tuesday night meeting, like Chad just said. In the future, that is something that we might be looking to change. Our scribe no longer is available or not available to attend the Wednesday nights. So that might be something that we change, but right now the Wednesday is not going to be what's dictated in the weekly notes. So.
Thanks, Ashley. Okay. Next, sponsors. Let's see how many people we have. We're up to 356. Out of 356 people, I bet there's somebody on here tonight looking for a sponsor. If you came here tonight without a sponsor, there's no reason to leave without a sponsor. It doesn't cost a dime, and it's a big part of what we have to do to stay sober. If there's anyone tonight looking for a sponsor, reach out by email. My email address right here, mpayne9@gmail.com. Send me an email, and I'll get on those tomorrow, and we'll get you hooked up with somebody. There's always a lot of confusion. I'll say send me an email, and somebody will put it in the chat box over here. You can't see this, but I'm pointing at the chat box. I don't know why I'm doing that. Nobody can see it anyway. But anyway, don't put it in the chat. It'll fly right by. I won't even see it, or I'll forget it, or whatever. Send me an email, and I'll deal with that stuff tomorrow. Also, if you're not new, and maybe you already have a sponsor, or if you've been in AA for a while and you're not using a sponsor, maybe you're just not experiencing what you hear folks talking about, and you'd like to get a little bit deeper into the program. We can get you set up with somebody to take you through the steps, or we can get you set up with more of a long-term sponsor, whatever we need to do. So again, just send me an email, and we'll get you set up with somebody. I'll probably get a little information from you. We'll get you set up with somebody. Okay. Next. Before we begin our study of the Big Book, we will review tradition. I have it marked here. Tradition number 3. So Kimber is going to read the third tradition, the short form and the long form, and that's on page 562 in the 4th edition. Kimber, you can unmute yourself. You're a co-host.
Okay, hi, I'm Kimber, and I'm an alcoholic. Tradition 3, short form, the only requirement for AA membership is the desire to stop drinking. Tradition 3, long form, our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Hence, we may refuse none who wish to recover, nor ought AA membership ever depend upon money or conformity. Any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided that as a group, they have no other affiliation.
Okay, that's good stuff. And notice there is a little bit of difference in the short form and the long form. One of the things that's been kind of common through AA and has caused a little bit of controversy. I know since I've been in AA, for sure, some of the groups that I've been involved in, is that a treatment center or a judge or somebody may send someone to an AA meeting and it's okay to be there as long as you have a desire not to drink. But if you look at the long form, it says to be a member of AA, it includes all who suffer from alcoholism. So in order for me to be a member of AA, I really need to meet two requirements. I need to suffer from alcoholism and also have a desire not to drink. Okay, in the spirit of the 12 traditions, our group conscience has elected to use a Big Book study guide to help us stay focused on our study of the AA Big Book. There are one or more questions for darn near every sentence in the basic text. The chairperson will read a question and then a member will read the related sentence. Kimber's going to do that tonight. It's okay to comment more than once in here, but please stay focused on the text at hand. And for anybody who's new here at this group, this is a really important thing that we always announce because it's one of the things that kind of separates this group from other book studies. Rather than share our experience with the reading, we try to share on what our founders are saying, what it means, why they're saying it now. If comments get too general or begin to drift off track, it's the responsibility of the chairperson to redirect the discussion. So what that's saying is, at most every AA meeting you ever go to, you're going to share your experience, strength, and hope, or your current experience with what the book is saying. Whatever it is, it's your experience. But we don't do that here. And we can't avoid it 100%, but we really try to avoid sharing our experience. What we're going to try to do here is discuss what the book is saying and focus our sharing on that. Okay, here's how to share. Select participants at the bottom of your screen, select more, and then select raise your hand. A little blue hand will go up by your face. And then we'll call on people. And we got a couple different sources we use here. They may be a little bit out of order. But anyway, please be patient. Sometimes we have some trouble with that. And then the last thing, Ashley and I both have a 1936 Webster's Dictionary. If you want to see what a word means or what it meant at the time they were writing the Big Book, just virtually raise your hand or call it out and we'll look it up. You can also send it in the chat and we'll get it looked up. Okay, tonight we're starting. So we're in the doctor's opinion. What a fun part of the book. And the 2 weeks ago, we read the letter that Dr. Silkworth wrote, which is basically an endorsement of the Big Book. And then over on the next page, on Roman numeral 26, XXVI, and this is in the 4th edition. If you're in a 3rd edition or maybe even a 2nd edition, the page numbers are going to be, it's going to be a couple pages off. But in the 4th edition, XXVI, Roman numeral 26, then Bill does a little commentary here about what the doctor's saying. So now we're on Roman numeral 27, XXVII, and now we're looking at what some people call the second letter Dr. Silkworth wrote. From what I understand, it's actually excerpts from a paper or that he had written for a journal that he kind of put into this form for the purpose of putting in the Big Book. So Kimber's going to read, and she's going to start with the doctor writes and read. It's actually quite a few paragraphs. It's going to be all the way down to the bottom of the page where it says gates of death.
Okay. The doctor writes, the subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. What, with our ultramodern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here, he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgiving, we consented. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death.
Wow, that's powerful. Okay, we're at P1 in the state guide. After it says the doctor writes, then we have who should be interested in what is contained in this book.
The subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction.
Okay, Kimber, this one has two parts. What was Dr. Silkworth's position, posit director?
I say this after many years' experience as medical director.
His hospital specialized in what?
Of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction.
Nice. Did Dr. Silkworth believe the material in this book was of sufficient substance to warrant his contribution?
There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages.
What did Dr. Silkworth say that doctors believe to be of importance to alcoholics?
We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its practical application presented difficulties beyond our conception.
With everything the medical profession had going for them, what were the doctors not equipped to do?
What, with our ultramodern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge.
Okay. What was it that one of the leading contributors, Bill W., of this book wanted to do with the ideas he had acquired?
Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here, he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once.
Okay, this one has two parts, Kimber. What privilege did Bill request of Dr. Silkworth? Pause it here.
Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here.
Was Dr. Silkworth really supportive of the idea?
And with some misgiving, we consented.
How did he feel about the cases that he reviewed after Bill W. did his thing?
The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing.
How did Dr. Silkworth view recovered alcoholics?
The unselfishness of these men as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field.
What do recovered alcoholics believe in?
They believe in themselves, and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death.
There's a comment here that says, on this page, Dr. Silkworth mentions moral psychology, followed by powers of good, and finally power capitalized, or deified, as some say. He recognized our need for a higher power and expressed his acceptance of this fact in the foregoing fashion. Okay. Have any comments? All right, Chip.
Hi, I'm Chip. I'm alcoholic. Man, this is cool stuff. I really appreciate Dr. Silkworth, but I do think science sometimes thinks it knows a little too much. And he talks about it in here. He knows he's got many years. And I use Al-Anon as proof that we don't have to drink to be affected by the disease of alcoholism. And this doctor, he talks about some of it. He's like, man, I've seen all these patients where doctors were trying to help them, but they got alcoholism, and we don't really have a solution for them, man. We see a lot of them get locked up or go crazy, kill themselves, die. You know, before Alcoholics Anonymous, there wasn't really a good solution for recovering from the disease of alcoholism. And he talked about it later, you know, through the centuries, there's been vast spiritual arrangements and stuff that, there's a few here and a few there, but nothing that we could actually apply. And so he's being real humble about it. He talks about moral psychology. I think that's the truth. Only God knows the truth, and he's the moral authority. I've learned. If I'm playing God, I can do whatever the hell I want. But when I start doing the inventory, I got to have authority, and I think he's the more. So it's moral psychology is conditioned by the truth or something. And then he talks about how science, it's like ultramodern standard or scientific approach. It's like they got an approach to the truth. And it works at times, but they really don't. It's synthetic knowledge, and they don't have. It's like I still think science is having a hard time telling what consciousness is, or what happened before the Big Bang, what was there before the Big Bang, stuff like that. They don't have all the answers, but sometimes they pretend they do. And he's trying to put that little thing in there. It's like, hey, we don't quite know everything. He's being real humble about it, I think, and he's again on the, he's just like, man, this is paramount importance. It's like, man, this is amazing. And it's like, he said, okay, well, we gave this guy a shot, and he started sharing his story with other people. And what happened was amazing. And I bet you he wanted to say miraculous, but he didn't want to be too too much in there, but it's and people say this is a selfish program. It says the unselfishness of these men, I don't carry the message because I want some. I'm doing this because I try to be unselfish. It's not my little plans and designs. It's not what I want. It's what the creator of the universe wants, or whatever. And I'm not trying to make money off of it or anything. And I love the fellowship and stuff. But it's quite inspiring, and it was quite inspiring to him too. That's why Al-Anon work with other people that aren't affected. They can see it's like, wow, there is powers of good. It's like, wow, man, look at these miracles and stuff. And they can see God at work too. But anyway, thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Chip. Good stuff. Okay, Raquel.
Hi guys, everybody. My name is Raquel. I'm an alcoholic. I actually was reflecting upon the application presented beyond our conception and the ultra-modern standards and everything. I love that. It reminds me how when we agnostics, it talks about logic is great stuff, and how actually going about the business of experiencing God or understanding God or the spiritual part of the program is something that cannot be done with my head. It cannot be done with my senses. It's something that is going to require something more. And I love the fact that you read about the powers of good moral psychology that then in turn was the power, like a deity, something bigger, something like bigger than myself. Another thing that I actually love is since they believe in themselves. And I think it was last week that we talked about this in the doctor's opinion when he closed by saying, you may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves, right? And then when I go to, there is a solution when he talks about the X problem drinker, right? One drunk talking to another. I know what you're going through. I know, right? So that's what I got of this one tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Raquel. Good stuff. This is a first. Here we are. Oh, there's a hand. Okay. Bridget. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Bridget. I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, I'm shocked you didn't have more hands too, Chad. I'm stunned. Because this letter and this document has so much in it that it's astounding. The first part that jumps out at me is the subject presented is he refers to it as paramount importance. Man, that's huge. That's absolutely huge for a doctor to say. Paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. I need this. We need this information. And then he goes on to say he's had many years of experience as a medical director. You know, he worked with like 40,000 alcoholics. This is like the top guy in the U.S., if not the world. You know, he'd been at Towns Hospital for 9 or 10 years or something like that. So the guy knows what he's talking about. And then he goes on later on down at the bottom of that second part to talk about the subject that's covered in masterly detail. You know, it doesn't get any better than that, because it's inspired by God. And then later on, moving down, the part where he talks about we're perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that are outside our synthetic knowledge. This is another guy, much like who's the guy, the shrink out in Switzerland or wherever the hell, Jung. Jung, who's he's going out of his comfort zone to talk about, say, hey, I gotta have God. We gotta have God. The number one doctor in the country is saying that doctors are basically no good. No good, and that we got to have a spiritual experience and a spiritual solution for this thing. And then the part down at the bottom of the next paragraph where it says, well, here Bill acquired certain ideas which he put into practical application at once. And there's your reference back to XVI for those ideas, but he put into practical application at once. This is his 12-step work. So he takes off and he goes and he starts in on his 12-step work immediately. And yet we come today, we're being told to wait until we've finished such and such, so much time and so forth, before we start that sponsorship and 12-step work. And then, down at the bottom where it talks about the unselfishness of these men and so forth, man, I'm just grateful that I get to be a part of Alcoholics Anonymous and part of an amazing tribe of people. And I have no idea if I've made anything that made any sense tonight, but thanks, you guys. Have a good night. It's nice to see y'all on a Wednesday night. Have a good day.
Thanks for sharing, Bridget. Good stuff. I think we had someone in the regular meeting one time. I think it was actually about Carl Jung, but it applies to Dr. Silkworth too. It's just we're just really grateful that he didn't say that it appears that the problem of the alcoholic is a severe shortage of Valium in his system or something like that. You know, to be able to say, to have a psychologist in Carl Jung and then a doctor in Dr. Silkworth say that what the alcoholic needs, or the alcoholic of this type, what this alcoholic needs is a spiritual experience is pretty amazing. Do we have any definitions yet, Ashley?
Yes, we do. I have synthetic, and that is not genuine or artificial. And then paramount, the definition of paramount is highest in rank or jurisdiction, supreme.
Okay, good stuff. We probably should do misgiving too.
Yep, that one's up here next.
Okay, next up is Kathy. Okay,
Hey, recovered alcoholic. This is great about that we talked about here. So at the beginning of this letter, the first thing that the doctor does is he lays out his credentials, right? He talks about not only does he have years of medical experience, but he's the director of one of the oldest hospitals. And so he's sort of like letting us know that he's a man that knows what he's talking about, and he's laid out his credentials. And he goes on to say that the material in the book has been covered in masterly detail. So here's a credentialed physician saying that the information in this book has been covered in a masterful way, that it's, really reliable information. And then I think a lot of the real meat here is in this next paragraph where he talks about doctors knowing for so long time that we needed moral psychology. And really, moral psychology was the doctor's way of saying that we needed a spiritual experience. But he's a doctor. He can't say spiritual experience. Everybody would have laughed at him. And so those were the words, that he had to use to sort of convey that conception, that idea of us needing a spiritual experience. And it's already been commented how about, these ideas that were required were put into practical application at once, no need to wait. And then I think it's interesting that the doctor goes on to talk about, us as some of the things about us, like if you've never known Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Because when this was written, Alcoholics Anonymous didn't really exist except for 100 people. And so he's really kind of trying to lay the groundwork for who these people are and what you can expect about them. And so this idea, first of all, that they're not only not selfish, but that there's no profit motive. There's no money in this. This isn't some, get rich quick scheme or pay some money to join a club or anything like that. Like right up front, you don't have to have any money to be a part of this. But not only that, he goes on to say how, they believe in themselves. So these are a group that's confident, that's doing this for fun and for free. And, I'm just really grateful that I get to be here and get to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Good stuff. Another definition here, this is said more than once in the book. I know Dr. Silkworth says it at least twice. He talks about a chronic alcoholic, and for the drug addicts out there, chronic might mean something different than you think it does, but chronic means continuing for a long time, of a disease of long duration, as opposed to acute. So an acute illness is something that you get and then you get over it and it's gone. Whereas a chronic illness is something more like diabetes or something that you got it for the long term, you can treat it, and you don't have to suffer from it if you treat it, but you still got it. And that's the kind of alcoholic that we're talking about. We're not talking about someone who had a drinking problem in their college years and then they get over it and it's just all gone. We're talking about the chronic alcoholic, the guy who can never take a drink again successfully. Okay.
And I'll interrupt and give misgiving real quick. So the definition of misgiving is a premonition of evil, a sense of distrust or apprehension.
Okay, cool. All right, let's see who we have next. Bob. Bob, I think you just muted yourself. Let me unmute you. Or maybe I did it. See if you can unmute yourself.
Am I there now?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. I'm Ellen, alcoholic. Bob's over there. Anyhow, I had more of a question. I was wondering how Dr. Silkworth got to this conclusion that moral psychology was needed for these alcoholics. And also, I think there's a warning after that when he says the application presented difficulties beyond our conception. And I think that's, when we get into AA, I think that's one thing we need to pay attention to, is that just because we know what the solution is, it's not going to snap right into place when we try it. So anyhow, if anyone's got information on how they came about to that conclusion that moral psychology, spiritual experience, whatever you want to call it, I wondered how these normies got to that conclusion. Thank you.
Okay, good question. Thank you. And I'm sure that's going to be, we're going to read more about that as we go on, and then it'll be shared more about, but just to give you a quick answer, that's what Dr. Silkworth saw with these alcoholics, the founders, the first 100 or whatever, the members when they were writing the book. Okay, next up is Carrie. Go ahead, Carrie.
Hey, I'm Carrie. I'm an alcoholic. I was looking also at the moral psychology section, and it says perhaps we're not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. And I think based on the way it's worded here, that moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics. when it's important to alcoholics, I believe that is a societal, that's my opinion, but that's a societal imposition. You know, and it is. I think that is a man's imposition. In my conception, it's always been imposed on me. Society imposes, you know, dictates, etc. And but when it says here, and that's the ultra modern standards, and then to apply the powers of good that lie outside of our synthetic knowledge. Outside of our synthetic knowledge would be the powers of good, and you know, what it seems like to be, sounds to be, you know, a power greater than ourselves, and you know, this where it comes here. You know, they refer again to this moral psychology again in XXXI, you know, which we haven't gotten to yet, but you know, this moral psychology, you know, seems to be a continued theme with Silkworth, and you know, this was a continued theme at the time. I did a little bit of research on it. And, you know, this definitely was kind of, it seemed to be a little bit of a movement of the time. So I think this was part of the growing theme of ethics when they were developing some of the laws at the time. And I took an ethics course in college, and they were discussing some of these things at that time. So that was just a little bit that I learned about that. Anyways, thanks for letting me share about that.
Thank you. Charlie, I know you had your hand up, and I think Ashley made you a co-host. You'll have to unmute yourself. Are you still on with us here?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud.
I'm Charlie. I'm a chronic alcoholic. There's really nothing acute about it. Coming to you from Houston. It's good to be with you folks tonight. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on with this letter from Silky, and there's several things that strike me. You know, because when he says we doctors have known for some time that some sort of moral psychology was necessary. I mean, I don't know how broadly held that. I guess it was, because we certainly weren't responding to standard physical treatment. You know, it wasn't like you could bring us in, detox us, and release us, and we'd be okay. They could. But the odd thing about it is that for him to say, I think it was a broadly held viewpoint that we had a moral problem. You know, and it's funny because in the earlier letter, a lot of Silkworth's contribution to our society was him saying that there was a physical aspect to it, you know, because before Silkworth, they thought it was strictly moral, and that we were morally weak and didn't have the willpower to stop drinking. And in his earlier letter, he was saying that, no, there's a physical component to it, that we have this phenomenon, this physical reaction to alcohol that's not regular. And so, he's covering both sides here. You know, that we doctors have known for a good while that we needed moral treatment, but also that we're also physically different from other people. And that was a lot of the big scoop with Silkworth. But, you know, there's a couple of things I find amusing in his letter. One is, you know, of course, he's got the perspective of a doctor in the 1930s, but for him, looking back on it now, you know, when he's saying our ultra-modern standards, you know, we're like belladonna treatment and hydrotherapy, you know, was about all they could do for us. But the one of the things that's really easy to overlook is, you know, I think Bill met Silkworth on his second visit to Towns Hospital, and then on his third visit is where he got sober. But even then, things weren't quite as established back then with 12-step work, you know, because it says when Bill wanted to come back and talk to their patients, they were like, well, all right, I guess, you know, I mean, but, you know, it says with some misgiving, they allowed him to come in and talk to the people because they didn't have a long history of their patients getting out and coming back and helping other patients, you know. So anyway, it's good to be with you folks. We're out of town tonight, but you guys are doing a great job with the meeting. Thanks for calling on me.
Thanks, Charlie. It's good to see you. Glad you made it on. All right, Chris.
Go.
There we go.
My name is Chris and I'm an alcoholic. I love the doctor's opinion. On page XXX, he writes, the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. Well, without some help somewhere, I've never been able to obtain anything like entire abstinence more than maybe 2 hours, okay? So when we go back up to the top of the doctor's opinion, after he's given permission to talk to somebody else, he begins to believe that is working with the others is one of the things that's going to keep these people going. Now on page XXVII, he writes, he writes about a power greater than yourself. He said that they not only believe in themselves, but in the power that drags them back from the doors of death, okay? So I think these things are the bedrock of step 2. This is what absolutely lays the foundation for step 2. And without that step 2, without that power of grace of a power greater than ourselves, we're dead in the water. We can't get anywhere. This was not only well written, it's just one of the most powerful parts of this book. I'll pass.
Thanks, Chris. Good stuff, buddy. All right, we'll call on Ramona. I'm trying, Ramona. There we go.
There you go. Okay, thank you. I just have this one line that I love. It says that where it says, many of them are amazing, the unselfishness of these men as we have come to know them, the entire abstinence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring. So what I see in that unselfishness, that's the beginning of the identification of the principles that we work on, honesty, all of those, that's referring to the traditions and the principles, and then the entire absence of profit motives, that's beginning the traditions, and then the community spirit is talking about step work with the 12th step and working with others and the primary purpose of AA. And in that one line, it gives me the principles, the traditions, and the work, and that's how I saw it. Thank you.
You know, I have a that kind of in brackets where it says starting with the unselfishness of these men down to belief in themselves and still more in this power. And then I have written me with a question mark. And there's some places in this book where they describe how they go about 12-step work or different things. And I have that mark. Is this me? Can I kind of put myself up against this? And what I mean by that is this how I'm showing up? Am I showing up to help others as a guy who's unselfish without a profit motive or any other kind of selfish motive? What about my community spirit? Am I involved in this community of AA? Do I believe in myself and still more in this power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death? So it's kind of an interesting thing, to turn some of these statements like this into questions and see if this looks like my experience. Next up is Linda. Uh-oh. There we go.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. It's great to be here with all of you tonight. The moral psychology, I found this in the history, part of the history of AA. And let me just find it here on my screen. It says, the doctor's opinion, the big book, is a letter from Dr. Silkworth, and he treated Bill for alcoholism on 3 separate occasions there. And that Dr. Silkworth's letter, in his letter, he stated that we needed this moral psychology. It was urgent importance that we've been talking about. But unless we can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope for the recovery. And they go on to say that Dr. Silkworth and his colleagues believed that not only did the thought processes of the mind need to be transformed, because that's a psychology, but the source of what powered those thought processes had to change. The American Heritage Dictionary defines psychology as the science that deals with mental processes and behaviors. Furthermore, it deems moral synonymous with virtuous. Therefore, the thought processes of the mind had to become virtuous. In order for this to occur, the mind of the alcoholic could no longer be propelled by the human nature or our instincts, but rather by the will of God through God's inspiration, as the back half of the 11th step bids, praying only knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry it out. The psychic change is the heart of the solution to our alcoholism. So what it means to me is, and everybody's mentioned these little things, that all of a sudden these people are here helping people. They don't want any money. They want to share their message. That it's this, that their thinking has changed. That, in other words, they've turned their life around, and instead of thinking, what's in it for me? This is Bill, what's in it for Bill? He's switched it up, and what's in it for God, and they're driven by God's will instead of their will. And then it shows Dr. Silkworth, in a very beautiful way, explains this, in these few paragraphs of what it's like to go out and do God's bidding. I like how he talks about the synthetic part too, because to me, synthetic means man-made. And when you go to a doctor, an MD anyway, they're there to give out drugs. Drugs are synthetic. Okay, they're not organic. And that's how they make their profit. That's how they make their money. If this would have came about in our day and time, Bill would have never got through the system. That this Dr. Silkworth had some very high moral character himself to be able to even say this out loud, let alone write it. And Bill wanted this Silkworth in the book because it validated, people, it's like when people go to their heart doctor, they want to know how to get better, and the doctor just wants to treat them instead of change their food, okay? So it is with this. He's saying, hey, I don't really have any drugs for you. What I have for you is moral psychology. And just for him to voice this and put it in writing, it's just so beautiful. It's definitely, God driven. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. All right, we'll get a couple more in here. Let's do Margie. There we go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Margie. I'm an alcoholic. So the part that stood out to me tonight was the part that says, many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital. And while here, he acquired some ideas, which he put into practical application at once. So first of all, it wasn't his first rodeo. So he had been in the hospital before, but he got these ideas, acquired these ideas while he was there, and started putting them into application in his own life, I'm guessing, and then in the lives of others, right? So I guess I have a question, because this group has a lot more knowledge than I do of history. is there anywhere in the text where they talk about where he got this idea? Like, it's just, he acquired it. Like, to me, that's pretty remarkable, because this idea that he just acquired somehow has changed the lives of 340 some people sitting here tonight. And we are just a drop in the bucket of the lives that have been changed by this one idea that he just acquired. So to me, I'm fascinated by this, right? Like, this is a really remarkable thing, that one person having an idea and then spreading it, it actually has done all of this that we see. Somebody's writing something and holding it up. Oxford Group. Oh, thanks, Chris. I can read. That's great. Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Yeah. So, I mean, it's amazing though, isn't it? Like, one person, and he was able to talk with others, and it's just spread. And now here we all are, right? Because community is part of it too. So it was his idea, but he had to have a community. He had to build a community while he was there in the hospital. And I just think that's really remarkable. I just wanted to share that. So thank you.
So some of the ideas that he acquired while in the hospital, one of the big ideas that he acquired was the understanding of alcoholism that Dr. Silkworth gave him. That's one of the things. But then also Ebby came to visit him while he was in the hospital, and that's where he did not the steps as we know them, but kind of took the steps more based on what the Oxford Group was doing, and he applied those, and then to go out and carry the message, or to come back and carry the message in this case. Hopefully somebody who knows a little bit more about history can clean that up a little bit. But thanks, Margie, good stuff. And let's see, Barry's up.
Hello, my name is Barry. I'm an alcoholic. And thank you very much for everyone for being here. And thank you for asking that question about where it is that he got the ideas and where he acquired the ideas from. When the Oxford Group came calling on Bill W., the Oxford Group was a big fan of a book called The Varieties of Spiritual Experience by William James. Now, when Bill Wilson recounted this later on, he says that coming into contact with the Oxford Group and with reading that book, he came to know an idea known as deflation at death, which was basically what we nowadays refer to as hitting bottom. When someone has absolutely burned down everything around them, when they've used their own willpower as much as they can, and it has destroyed them just as surely as the alcohol has, then that person might be willing to change. The way that the book Varieties of Spiritual Experience phrased it was that people who have gone through a dark night of the soul will often have a spiritual experience. They'll completely revitalize the way that they view life afterwards. Now, once again, Bill Wilson took some knowledge and he got some inspiration from it. A lot of the ideas, such as deflation, death, and hitting bottom, were not something that the Oxford Group had inside of their vocabulary, and it wasn't something they got from William James' book. There was something that happened when Bill Wilson came into contact with that knowledge. Something else occurred, some form of inspiration. And just to go back with this, we talked a lot about moral psychology. Remember that another one of Bill Wilson's writings, it says, he's talking about doctors examining alcoholics, and says they finally came up with a conclusion that shocked the AA members of the time. These distinguished men had the nerve to say that most of the alcoholics under investigation were still childish, emotionally sensitive, and grandiose. And that hurt my feelings when they said that. Downs Hospital was literally the #1 treatment center for Alcoholics Anonymous at the time. And 2 meetings ago, someone mentioned their success rate was 2%. That means that out of every 100 alcoholics seeking treatment, 2 stayed sober. And at that time, the cure for alcoholism was not the complete abstinence from alcohol. It was managing to go a year or 5 years with complete abstinence from alcohol. The concept of people never drinking again was something so foreign to them and so amazing to them that they did not even consider it part of their definition at that time. When this came in, when these men are sitting here and they're reading about this and they're studying and they're treating alcoholics every day, and above all, they're treating alcoholics after they've dried out. If you're a doctor and you see an alcoholic when they dry out, you've got to be aware that there's some problem other than just the chemical dependency going on there. What we refer to as fear and resentment, what we call selfishness and self-centeredness. If you're a doctor and you're actually clinically analyzing this, it occurs to you at some point, man, even when these people are dried out, even when they are sober, even when they're abstinent from alcohol, there is something else going on. So they were aware that there was a psychological component. They were aware that there was a physical component. Bill Wilson added the concept of a spiritual experience, which was something that the doctors may have suspected or may not. I do not know. But as we're going on through this, once again, we sit there and we look at this letter as it's being read by a newcomer in. And, later on in this book and working with others, the very first line of it is going to be that few things ensure refraction from alcohol as much as intensive work with other alcoholics. The spiritual experience, the concept of 12-step work. Please notice, both of these letters, this entire doctor's opinion, those two ideas are written all over this. Once again, it's doctors and doctors who are coming up, men of science, coming up with the idea that you have to have a spiritual experience and you have to find some form of higher power. Thank you.
Wow, that was great. Thanks, Barry. Let's see, Ray, we've got about 2 minutes left, so we've got time for a quick one, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thanks, Chad. I'm Ray Shepard. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I want to get back to the doctor's opinion. This chapter, the doctor's opinion, started off with him describing Bill as a hopeless alcoholic. His entire treatment at that time, we have to remember when we're talking about the treatment that they had back in the 20s and the 30s, medicine wasn't as it is today. But this treatment, the belladonna treatment, they call it the puke and purge method of treating. Their whole idea was, we got to stop these alcoholics from drinking. We got to have them control their drinking. Well, the alcoholics just told us here on page Roman numeral 26 that we can't control our drinking. And so Silkworth was rather perplexed. We got to do something other than just this puke and purge treatment. We got to do something that's going to get them to change their mind, i.e. the moral psychology. And we can't do that. So the whole emphasis here of these alcoholics that are involved in writing this book, they're taking what Silkworth had written, that we don't know how y'all can control your drinking, to taking and putting as the question. That's not the problem. The problem is, how do we stay away from the first drink? And so next week, when we get to this it's going to be a real controversial page, this next page, Roman numeral 28, when we start talking about the physical problem that the alcoholic has and the emphasis that Silkworth and the other physicians lay on that. They can't control their drinking. Once they start, they can't stop. And that's where Silkworth said, that's what we got to treat. And he realized, I can't treat that. And so his opinion is, we can't do anything for you, but look at those guys over there. I don't know what it is they got, but they're able to get you to stop drinking. So till next week, thank you.
Thanks, Ray. All right, what a great meeting. I'm learning so much. Okay, this is from page 164 of the big book, but as it's printed in As Bill Sees It on page 331. It says, we realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but you obviously cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and for countless others. This is the great fact for us. For the newcomer, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Thanks for a good meeting, guys. Congratulations to anybody celebrating any time out there. Welcome to our visitors. We have a tradition of closing with the 7-step prayer, and we've actually developed a tradition here of unmuting everybody, even the folks that don't know they're being unmuted. So it's going to sound pretty crazy, but we're going to do that, and then I'm going to post the 7-step prayer when it comes up. Just say it at your own pace. Here we go.
Dad. Oh.